Hello and welcome to a new show on Ickonic, in which I'm going to answer questions from subscribers, and of course the nature of the content will depend on the questions. There's some very good ones we've received already, and I'm going to start this week, this first show, with a question from Hannah.
You've mentioned that the end-time prophecies are orchestrated rather than natural occurrences. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the current pole shift and the 12,000-year cycle we seem to be reaching the end of. I'm not religious, but I personally feel at this moment, from what I've learned so far, that these texts and tablets that the Bible was created from might be based on historical events from previous cycles. It seems to me that these stories are symbiotic representations of past occurrences, like how poetry is written, for example, written by those who survived the previous cycle to warn us and prepare us, rather than being literal prophecies of what we will experience. I'm interested in your thoughts on this subject.
Well, my take on the Bible and what it says in the Old and New Testament and how that relates to current events has been very much focused on whether it's true or not and where it came from. And I'm just in the process of finishing a book to come out in the very first week of January, called The Roadmap, in which I look in detail, in part of the book, in great detail, at what the religious texts say and what credibility can be given to them. And in terms of the origin, say, of the Old Testament, that seems pretty clear to me that it came out of Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris. And this is the land, of course, of the Sumerians and the Sumerian tablets from thousands of years ago, which talk about the Anunnaki, quote, gods, non-humans that came from the sky. And it's the land of Akkad, the land of Babylon, Assyria. And so it seems to me that a lot of the Old Testament, if not the bulk of it, was taken from stories that happened in Mesopotamia, that are said to have happened, and they were put and relocated in another land, what we call Israel, and another people. And later in the Old Testament, in the period where the texts were actually written, what were we talking about, the 7th century BC, when it really started, they took these Mesopotamian stories and they put them in a new historical and location context. And from those stories, of course, has come Christianity, because Christianity contains a lot of stories that are said to be an outgrowth of Judaism, the Old Testament. And of course, you've got the Old Testament version of God and the New Testament version of God, which are very different. And somehow, because the Old Testament and the New Testament have been put together in one book, Christians and followers of the Bible are asked to somehow square that circle. So then you can go on into the AD period of the 600s, and you come across what eventually became Islam. And Islam includes, as a matter of historical fact, so many characters, not just from the New Testament like Jesus, but from the Old Testament, of Moses, of Abraham. Abraham's a massive part of the origins, it is said, of the Islamic belief system. So what you've got are these stories that go through history and they become accepted fact. They become historical beliefs that they actually happened. And they're then passed on to the next version and the next version. And this is where so many of these different religions come from. And I go into this in some detail in this new book. Why? Because it dawns on you when you look at the impact of religion through the centuries, just what a foundation it has been to human control. Human control by control of perception of reality. And if you look at these religions, you have a belief system which, to be one of us, like a Christian or follower of Judaism or Hinduism or Islam, you have to believe within certain parameters. And if you go outside of them, then you're a blasphemer or you are an infidel or whatever. And so they have had a massive impact on the perceptions of the population of reality and self. And it's interesting, I'm just watching an old series at the moment called The Tudors, which is about Henry VIII, who had a lot of wives. And looking at that, of course, it's a series, it's a drama, so won't be 100% accurate, but there's enough accuracy in it to see the impact then in that period of Christianity and its imposition on the lives of the people. So these biblical prophecies that Anna talks about, the more I see them, the more controlling they become, rather than historically pertaining to what actually happened. And what I'm saying in relation to the Old Testament and the Orthodox Jewish belief system is that we are seeing apparent biblical prophecies not being brought about by God, but by human manipulation. And so you have this whole deal with the temples, the Jerusalem temples. First of all, Solomon's temple. And I can tell you that there is no evidence that there was a Solomon or a David, his father. And archaeologically, there is none either. And yet the foundation is that there was a Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. Then it is said that there was a second temple. There's a heck of a lot more evidence for that, of course. It was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. A guy called Titus went on to be emperor of Rome. That's a whole story in itself. And now, because that was destroyed, the whole idea is to bring about the third temple, because what the prophecies say is that the third temple is built and then the Messiah can come. And, I think there's a lot of mix-ups between the Christian Messiah, which they say the return of Jesus, and the Jewish Messiah, which a lot of people take that to be the same kind of entity, if you like, but that's not the way it really is. And the Jewish Messiah is different. And so part of the prophecy, for instance, is that a red heifer has to be sacrificed, and it's a particular red heifer. It must never have had a yoke around its neck. It must never have been worked, etc. And it was born in Israel. So where's your red heifers in Israel? Oh, we don't have any. So what are we going to do? Oh, I know. They have some in Texas, don't they? So they brought red heifers over from Texas. Now, God didn't do that. Humans did that. And they've also created like a model of the third temple, which they want to put onto what Christians and Jews call Temple Mount. Now, on there at the moment is the Dome of the Rock and the Alaska Mosque. Now, if you said not that long ago that you were going to demolish what's currently on Temple Mount, and you were going to replace it with a third Solomon's temple, or third Jewish temple, then people would have said, you're crazy, man. It will be a bloodbath. Imagine what the Palestinians would do and the Muslims would do in relation to that. But then now you look at it. You've got the Palestinians absolutely on the point of total destruction in Gaza, and you've got the West Bank, which is the occupied West Bank, should be Palestinian land, according to international law, but it's been virtually completely taken over by Jewish settlers. And you've got the Israeli army attacking Syria, attacking, Iran recently, attacking Lebanon. They're also attacking Yemen, and in almost complete control of the land of what is now called Israel. And therefore, suddenly, the possibility of what would seem not long ago impossible, or you never get away with that, suddenly takes on the realm of the possible. So how does this relate to cycles and what have you? Well, I'm going to get into this with the second question, which comes from Valerie.
There has been a lot of rather serious talk going around, particularly in the spirituality circles, to comprehensive degrees in some instances regarding this 3D existence gradually or currently preparing to transition into the 5D new Earth. According to these claims, the chosen ones, a smaller population of people who have achieved a certain higher frequency and awareness knowledge level about what is really going on here in the 3D Earth, etc., will be available to enlighten those who have at least achieved this transition. Only people who have spirit and consciousness, not AI, once they are there. In other words, if you have a spirit and consciousness, but have given into darkness, evil practices with the intention to cause harm, you will not achieve the transition because your frequency, among other things, is very low.
Well, this relates to the first question, which is why I'm doing this in two parts. See, it's my contention, having looked at this in such detail over many, many years, that we live in a simulated reality, whereby it's like a Wi-Fi field where a computer decodes the Wi-Fi field into a very different form on the screen. And what I'm saying is this biological computer, as I call it, the human body, is decoding the simulation field, which is waveform information in its base state, through the five senses into a sense of physical reality, just like the internet on the screen, in a very different form to the Wi-Fi field. And that it's designed to so control our perception of reality that we believe that what we're experiencing is real when it's not. And these periods, if you like, these sequences of the simulation, they start and they end, and then you go into another level of the simulation. It's the way I see it anyway. And I guess this could relate to the Mayan cycles of time and the Yuga cycles of Indian and Hindu belief. But there's a cycle that comes to an end and then another cycle starts. And it could well be that we are coming to the end of a cycle. It may not be, but I do think that the next part of the cycle, if you like, which is controlled by AI, if we allow it to happen, is very much an upgrade on human control. And that may be the start of another cycle of control. The point about the 3D Earth, however, and how, what does Valerie say regarding this 3D existence gradually and currently preparing to transition into the new 5D new Earth? I don't go with that story, to be honest. For me, what you have is this dense physicality, but it's not physicality. We can see only a tiny, tiny smear of infinite reality called visible light. Now, when energy falls to a low vibration, people like Einstein talked about, and it becomes part of this visible light. So if I'm looking around this room now, I'm seeing form and lights and a camera and a table. I'm seeing form. And in between the form seems to me to be empty space. And empty space is all of that, it's not empty at all. Empty space is simply that which is not within the limitations of visible light. Form is, matter is. And that's why the world appears to be made up of matter, because matter, as we perceive it, is simply energy that's been condensed to a very low, slow vibration, and appears to be, in our decoding processes, appears to be physical. Now, this simulation not only has this dense physical level, which we perceive as the world of human, it has other levels too, known as the astral level, and which is also broken up into levels of frequency. And the reincarnation process, for me, is leaving the consciousness, what we call soul, leaving the body, it's what near-death experiences are experiencing, and entering the astral level, which is perceived as, the best of it anyway, as like heaven, but it's not heaven at all, it's just part of the trap. And the idea is, and these near-death experiences in vast numbers have talked about this, how you come back to experience another human life in another situation, and you kind of learning lessons to evolve your consciousness. I think that's a load of nonsense, and I think it's a trap. And so basically what you've got is this 3D earth, as Valerie talks about, this dense physical earth, and then you leave this at what we call death. And what is death? Death is when the decoding biological computer that's decoding this reality into what we appear to be experiencing, it's when it ceases to function. And when you've got a computer on the desktop that's reading the internet and putting it on the screen in a different form, well, when the computer dies, as people call it, then you don't see the internet anymore because it's not decoding it anymore. And that's what death is. It's the malfunction, the end of the cycle of the biological computer. And so suddenly people find themselves, their awareness, in another dimension of reality, because it's no longer being held here by the perception that the biological computer is decoding. So you enter this other realm, and I'm sure there'll be many questions about this as we go through this series. So I won't go into detail now, because I want to concentrate on these questions this week. But you then enter another realm, the astral realm, that is still a form of physicality, but it's much less dense than this one. And what you might say, where Valerie's talking about the 5D Earth, the 5D Earth is perceived to be a much more high vibrational Earth. And this is how I'm seeing it after these years of studying this. What people call the 5D Earth, I'm calling prime Earth or prime reality. Because what I'm saying is that there is, in the same space that we are experiencing this simulation, there is the prime Earth, the Earth that was there before and is still there. It's the reality on which the simulation is founded. I mean, the Gnostics, in their Nag Hammadi texts found in an earthen jar in 1945 in Nag Hammadi in Egypt, which is said to be put in that jar around 400 AD, but goes back much further. They talk about the fact that there is a different Earth to this one, that this simulation, as we would call it today, was created as a copy, a bad copy, the Gnostics talk about, of this prime reality. Now, this prime Earth is, it seems to me, very much more advanced, fantastically more advanced, both in frequency, knowledge, awareness, love, all of that, than this simulated bad copy. And so that prime Earth exists in the same space that I'm sitting in now and you're sitting in. It's just that it's of a completely different frequency, which we're not capable in the physical body form of perceiving. Although some people who have near-death experiences or project their consciousness into other dimensions, they do see this, this prime Earth, if you like. And I've quoted people in the books who claim to have memories of their incarnation process. They're fewer in number, obviously, than near-death experiences in general, but they do have very consistent themes in what they describe. One of them has described how, as they were coming into this reality, they saw, and this is a term I've been using for years and years and years in the books, they saw an overlay, which is this simulation, an energetic overlay over another Earth, another Earth reality. And what people call 5D Earth and beyond, I say, is that prime reality. And it seems that basically what's happened is you had the prime Earth, and this simulation is a copy, almost like a digital, a vibrational frequency digital copy of prime Earth. It's like, I'll tell you what it's like. It's like you've got a website, and the website is as it is, and then you take a copy of the website. Now you've got a copy of the website. The original website continues to exist as it always did, but now you've got a copy of it. And now you can change your copy. You can make it, in the end, very different to the original, but it's still based on that same original. And so we have seen, since this bad copy was made, how what was the life in prime reality being changed into something extraordinarily different in terms of our experience. Prime Earth is nothing like bad copy Earth, in other words. And I think there's a confusion whereby people mistake this prime reality for some 5D version of Earth. And for me, the way out of this bad copy and its astral levels, through which we get stuck on this, what Buddhists call wheel of samsara, reincarnating to learn lessons to evolve. Well, there's nothing to do with learning lessons. It's about entrapping people for reasons I talk about in the books, and I'm sure I'll get into in this series with questions. And this brings us to this third question by Tim Hart.
If the matrix control system extends into the astral realms, is intention, knowledge and self-awareness sufficient for us to reach the void after physical death? Or do we need deep inner shadow work and self-mastery to escape the reincarnation trap, as Isabella Green and Howdy McCoskey seem to be implying?
Well, that is a very good question. How do we free ourselves not just of this 3D, dense, physical, human realm, but of the astral realms that are part of this simulation? Well, in the end, it's all about frequency, and frequency comes from perception. It's well known that, and this is mainstream science, that every time we think or have an emotional feeling, we are generating energy, we're generating frequencies. And the nature of the frequencies we generate relates to the nature of the thought and the nature of the emotion. So things like fear are very low, slow emotions and frequencies. And all these other things like anxiety and depression and resentment, regret, are all low frequencies. Ignorance itself is a low frequency. As what you might call enlightenment is a high frequency, as love and joy and happiness and knowledge is a high frequency. Spiritual knowledge I'm talking about. So the sum total of our, if you like, state of being, the frequencies we're generating through our emotions and our thoughts, represent what I'll call our perceptions, our perceptional field. That is dictating what we are, what we're resonating to, what our frequency is. And so the simulation itself has a frequency limit. There's a kind of theme in esoteric circles of something called the ring past not. This is basically a frequency barrier which you can't get beyond if you are in a certain level of perception, i.e. frequency. So to get out of the matrix, I mean, we leave this level of the matrix every time the body ceases to function, because it's not decoding this level of reality, this material level of reality, and we are freed into the astral. But then we've got to get through the astral to get out of the simulation and into the great infinity of forever. And to do that, we've got to free ourselves of the perception of everything to do with the simulation. Because while we perceive the simulation on any level, astral or human, to be real, we are attaching ourselves to it. So this is why it's so important, and why I've focused so much on this in recent books, as I have in the roadmap. Because once you enter the astral, you're entering that realm which is basically about what's your next incarnation going to be, because you've got karma, load of rubbish by the way, karma. You've got your karma to pay back, and so you've got to now have this experience to balance your karma from previous experiences and all this stuff. So you're basically really caught in the trap. When you go up that tunnel or to that light, and as the near-death experiencers call it, and you go, well, of course, near-death experiences, they come back. They don't pass the threshold. When you pass the threshold, it's a very different I'm sure, experience than it is in the love and light of the initial experience that people talk about in near-death experiences. And so that basically the astral is about bringing you back, learning lessons. This is why it's so important, while in a human incarnation, to become aware of how the trap works and what this reality is. Because, you know, the Buddhists talk about the fact that your best chance to get out is immediately after you leave the body, the human body. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And so the more you know, the more you become aware of while in a human form, the more aware and streetwise you are when you leave the body, and you don't get caught in the traps of, oh yeah, because you know, you have these projections of your religious heroes or whatever, and your family loved ones, to get you up and back into the astral wheel of samsara. But you can get out at this point when you leave the body if you are aware of the game and how it works. What's happening, if you look at both at the astral, but most blatantly the human world, this whole system is designed to keep you in a low vibrational state. It's designed to keep you within the frequency bounds of the simulation. So you are in the simulation and of the simulation in terms of your perception. And the more that we can, we interact with people, we interact with loved ones, and that's all good. But when it comes to leave, we need to detach, and indeed even before that, but let's take that forward, to detach from a connection with this human realm and all its nonsenses and all its illusions. Because if we stay attached to it, if we stay attached to this reality, if we stay attached to people within this reality, then that attachment is going to hold us in the frequency band, the frequency range limitation of the matrix. And we're not going to get out. People talk about earthbound spirits. What are earthbound spirits? They are those that have this massive attachment still to the earth experience, that they're held here by that connection. And in terms of, you know, going through your life and preparing for that, it's like all these dramas that are put before us. Oh my God, have you heard the latest? What's happened? They're all designed to hold our attention, our focus in this reality. And it's so important that we take a step back and become overwhelmingly the observer of events rather than getting pulled into them. Because as you get pulled into them, you become them. In terms of frequency, you become them. They absorb you. Whereas if you can hold the point of observation, you are looking at what's going on, you're observing it, you're making judgments on it in terms of how you respond, but you're not getting pulled in and caught in that vibrational connection that holds you in the drama. And so many times you see people, you know, they're all going into the drama mode of, oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh my God, oh, it's terrible, and oh, I don't know what's going to happen. My life is over. And you meet them a week later and you say, well, how are you? Oh, I'm all right now. It turned out to be nothing. Well, if you're an observer, well, you cannot get caught in that stuff. And so much of human control is by being caught in the dramas that are systematically put before us to elicit fear, anxiety, resentment, regret, hatred, whatever, that are vibrational states that hold you in the walls of the matrix. So, in short, I don't hold credence with the biblical stories. I'm sure there are some that are very symbolic of many things, and that's fine. But I don't take them as historical fact at all, because the evidence is that they're not. And in terms of the 3D, 5D Earth, I say that one is the prime Earth that still exists, from which this copy was made, a bad copy, which is what this human body and the five senses connects with, and thus we appear to be experiencing it when it's nothing more than a virtual reality. Just like the virtual reality headset, that's what this body is. It's a virtual reality headset decoding the virtual reality that entraps our what? Our perception. And in terms of Tim Hart's question, do we need to do shadow work and self-mastery to escape the reincarnation trap? Well, what people choose to do is entirely up to them. What I'm talking about is the basic dynamic. We are in this simulation matrix, which has a frequency limitation. The idea to keep us here is to make sure that our emotional and mental state keeps us in a frequency state that is within that simulation. Otherwise, we can't leave. So whatever we choose to do, the idea is to expand your awareness, free yourself from the illusory perceptions of this reality which are designed to hold you within its frequency walls, and then when you leave the body you can leave the matrix. So how people choose to bring about that state of expanded awareness that frees them from the frequency walls of the matrix is entirely their choice, and is entirely their unique way of doing it. But in terms of the dynamic, that for me is, in the simplest of terms, what we're looking at. If we stay in certain vibrational, perceptual states, we stay in the matrix. If we move beyond those perceptual states, we leave the matrix. Bye. See you later. And that is the simple, basic knowledge that the simulation in all its forms and cults and facets wants to stop you knowing. And it's amazing. They say the more you know, the more there is to know. But my experience is this: the more you know, the simpler it gets. And so much of this complexity that kind of bombards us, it's a complexity to hide the simple truths behind it. It's the simple truths that set us free. I'll see you next time.